A Georgia bookshop now demanding the right to send books to jail inmates, suing the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office for stopping them. Atlanta News First, Chelsea Beinpour is live outside the Gwinnett County Jail tonight. And Chelsea, the store says the jail's policies infringe on their First Amendment rights.
Yeah, this Athens bookstore says inmates have the right to read books. The sheriff's office doesn't deny that, but they say the policies they have in place have nothing to do with the content of the books and everything to do with inmate safety.
And it is an eclectic bookstore, general interests, with a very curated selection and a small staff.
Luis Correa is the operations manager at Avid Bookshop in Athens. He's passionate about literature, so when a customer asked him to mail books to an inmate at the Gwinnett County Jail last year, he was happy to help.
I thought I had followed everything down to the letter, and of course they had these Byzantine policies in place.
Shortly after shipping the books, they showed back up to his shop with a slip that said they didn't come from an authorized retailer.
And being able to send books to someone who's incarcerated is an act of free speech, is an act of expression, and the government should not be able to inhibit that kind of expression.
Avid Bookshop filed a federal lawsuit against the Gwinnett County Sheriff and Chief Jailer last week, challenging the constitutionality of the jail's mail policy, which says magazines and books will be accepted as long as they're mailed directly from a publisher or authorized retailer. The sheriff's office declined to do an interview, but said in a statement, the policy does not limit the content or subject matter of the publication, but only the origin of the shipment. The policy is intended to prevent contraband from entering the jail and to keep inmates and staff safe.
Regardless of what their intentions might be behind what they think, de facto, they've created a blanket ban on independent bookstores being able to express themselves through their policies.
And we do know that Gwinnett County inmates here at the jail have access to thousands of books from a library inside and electronic tablets where they can access books online. And again, the sheriff's office says you can send mail to inmates. They can receive books, but they have to come from a larger authorized retailer, something like an Amazon or a Barnes & Noble. Reporting live from the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office and Jail, Chelsea Beinpour, Atlanta News First.